Welcome to the new and improved podcast, not the Influencer Marketing Blueprint, but what is now called The Bottom Line. Taylor and I jump in on this episode as to the reasons why in a very deep way on why we changed our name, how we've evolved as an agency, how we've evolved the show, which is, if you've been following us, you've been following the show, subscribing, listening to every episode, you've probably seen the progression and just what we talk about, the emphasis of things that we talk about, the diversity of things that we talk about versus just it being influencer. Influencer is still going to be a part of the show. It's still a part of our agency. It's still a part of our ethos, why we think or how we think brands can grow today, but it is not everything. And so Taylor and I get into on this episode, transparently, we did not know the new name of the show at the time of this recording, just because we were still brainstorming what do we want to call this. As you guys know, this will be show moving forward will be called The Bottom Line, but in this episode, we're just going to be jumping into exactly the reasons why and how we've evolved over the years. And so a little bit of storytelling, but without further ado, let's jump in. Got my co-pilot back. What's up, Taylor?
I'm living the dream over here, CW. How we living?
We're doing good, man. We're doing good. All right. Well, we've obviously unveiled a new name change to the podcast. And for longtime listeners, maybe you remember we started this out in June of 2022. And in 2 years since, by the time we're releasing this new season, new show, the, 2.0 version of the podcast, we've evolved as an agency. And so to many people, this probably isn't a surprise, especially if you've been following us on social or our newsletter. You've seen the emphasis on contribution margin, forecasting, doing a forecasting series, meta ad accounts, and less about influencers specifically. And that is because the show has evolved with us as we've been more reflective on how not only we're currently servicing clients, but also in the value of what we think is most crucial to running successful e-commerce businesses today. And so we're going into a bit of a story time of how the ins and outs a little bit from a high level of how we've evolved as an agency throughout the years, and as to why/how we've evolved, which will set the stage for the podcast moving forward and some exciting updates for this show as we release episodes. But all right, take a seat in front of Uncle Taylor here as he sits on his rocking chair and
bedtime story
tells you the story of Kynship. But maybe give, obviously the show was formerly called the Influencer Marketing Blueprint. So when we launched in 2022, that was very much the emphasis of our agency at the time, even though we'll get into 1.0, 2.0, and then what today is 3.0 for us. 1.0, Influence Marketing Blueprint, was probably in that timeline of probably pretty quickly we were evolving into 2.0. But up until that point, very much an emphasis on influencer.
And just to be clear, when we launched the podcast June 2022, we were in business for 3.5 years already?
Yeah, January 2019. 19, yeah.
Just want to make that delineation, though. When we launched the podcast, wasn't when we launched the business. We were 3.5 years deep at that point. But yeah, as you can tell, 1.0 lasted quite some time, though, based on what CW had just articulated. So yeah, 1.0 was very much so all about influencer marketing. We built the influencer marketing pyramid, but we really focused on this core foundation of that pyramid, and we still do today. It's just not the only thing that we have to offer. So influencer seeding, right? That was what 1.0 was all about. That was the sexy thing. Influencer marketing is the sexy channel for people. It's the shiny new toy that people want to buy and try and hope it works out for them. And so they can be one of those case studies that they hear about all the time where influencer marketing scaled my brand, this, that, and otherwise. But what ends up being the case is a lot of people see it as very holiday specific, where it's for BFCM, it's for gifting moments in December, it's for Mother's Day, it's for Father's Day. It's not an evergreen service that everyone buys into. It should be, in our opinion. It was our opinion then, it's still our opinion now, especially when it comes to seeding. You should be getting your product in the hands of the masses, of people that influence every single month and sourcing creative for them, getting them to post organically, all of that. Again, that was the only thing and the main thing at that point within the 1.0 version of Kynship. We haven't deviated away from offering that. It's still a core offering that we provide clients. We've just expanded at this point. What led to 1.0 to 2.0? Again, 1.0, influencer can be somewhat holiday specific or peak moment specific. It doesn't lead to a very sustainable business. But outside of the profit of Kynship, I would honestly say the biggest thing was one of the main value adds of seeding with Cody and I at Kynship is the content production, the content pipeline that it creates, ultimately for the purpose of supplementing ad accounts. Both Cody and I have a background coming from paid media. And so, when doing influencer seeding, yes, organic awareness and word of mouth and getting your product in the hands of influencers, all of that were value out of the service. But I would say the main value out of the service from the jump was, hey, when you do this, this is the most cost-effective way to source mass amounts of creative at scale from professional content creators that are creating content on the platforms they're looking to advertise on. So who better to source creative from? So massive pipeline of content to source creative to then supplement the ad account. So in 1.0, we would lean on these other ad agencies to run these pieces of creative. We would lean on these other brands to run these creatives. And what we came to find out is, for lack of better words, they sucked.
Well, that's a good pause point. Yeah, I mean, that is a little teaser of 2.0 with, for lack of a better phrase, that Taylor mentioned. I would just say certainly there's a ton of white space in 2021 and 2020 that was like you and I growing on Twitter talking about the content pipeline of influencer seeding. There was tons of free flow of money flowing around from COVID and stimulus, and certainly people could only buy on one channel. That was certainly what we learned on COVID. If I'm sure amongst other things was that people still live their lives even if they're in lockdown. People still want to buy and consume. And that was a lot of businesses ended up, and we'll get into the aftermath in 2022 for agencies and businesses. But yeah, I mean, even looking up our stats from 2021, we signed 47 new clients, but the average length was 2 months. And so it's like, great, we're signing all these people, but people are, to your point of like the try influencer marketing for a little bit is still very much, it probably still is, honestly, is like, it's not a evergreen channel, at least when you're hiring an agency. I think as you get into the upper echelons of the Hexclads and Ridges of the world, you just build this out internally where it does become an evergreen channel. But very much we are almost a content agency. We're just delivering a bunch of content from influencer, and we put together this unique package that, posting about on Twitter got us, a bunch of leads, and we had a unique offering that was certainly sexy, and it kind of aligned with influence marketing being just kind of a sexy, try it out channel. Not a good business model for the people at Kynship, which hence 2.0, which you already teased on, but keep going.
Yeah, for lack of better words, I'll try to make better use of my vernacular in describing how we transitioned to 2.0. But it kind of touches on like what we were posting on Twitter too, and I think this is kind of ultimately what slapped Cody and I in the face with, wow, we should probably make this mandatory. A lot of the things that we were posting about on Twitter was how our service from influencer seeding impacted clients, where it became a case study. And what was the different variable within that case study was, we were the ones actually running the ad account here a majority of the time, right? Where we had control of how this creative was being deployed within the ad account, and where we had control of, hey, every single piece of creative being ran in the ad account. For all the listeners that tuned into this podcast, throughout our time together, I think everyone, this is probably redundant in communicating that, hey, every single piece of creative that we have at our disposal from influencer seeding is another opportunity to find profitable spend against a cost control. We want to remove our human bias from what's worth running versus what's not worth running. Everything's worth running at the end of the day, because if it ultimately doesn't pan out against the cost control, the worst thing that happens is it doesn't spend any money, no harm, no foul. But if it does, in which Cody and I have seen thousands, if not tens of thousands of creative at this point that have been able to get spend that we would have never thought would have profitably against a cost control that would be considered ugly ads or whatever. So what happened within 1.0 that got us to transition to 2.0? I mean, we would send over 150 pieces of creative that we were able to gather for brands or agencies to then run themselves in the ad account. They would, again, allow human bias to interfere, and they'd pick and choose 2 or 3 pieces of content for them to run while throwing aside 140 to 150 of those ads that we provided them with. That was a big reason why we transitioned to making it mandatory to run paid media on our end. And then in addition to that, they'd run highest volume campaigns and just burn money and light it on fire instead of running cost controls and just set up the ad account quite poorly, to be honest, in comparison to how we would set it up. So this is what ultimately transitions us to 2.0. But C-Dub, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, it's just tough. Like, it's tough being, I still don't know how pretty much creative agencies do it. Because even, I think the biggest pushback a lot of times we get was, well, the creative doesn't look like an ad. You know, it's not the cookie cutter scripted, even us versus UGC, or it's not the static, you know, studio shoot style content, where at least it's satisfying what people deem as it looks good. But still, at the end of the day, you're putting your performance in someone else's hands, ultimately, at the end of the day. And so it's just tough when you're fulfilling what you were signed up to do, but then you're judged on how it actually performs and your judgment is not in your control. So it's tough. That was an immediate thought, is like, so, I mean, in short, 2.0, we just started requiring paid media. And like you've hinted at, it's always been a part of our ethos. Even in 1.0, we were doing it kind of in the background. It just wasn't on the forefront of our marketing material, and we were selling what people wanted. And certainly, and this was really in 2022, by the time we launched the podcast, we were already making this change. And I would say 2022 was a tough year for a lot of agencies. Certainly us is, you know, one of our toughest years as an agency, as we got, I would say, focused on the main thing as we, you know, had this involvement, which obviously means like you're not signing as many people but you're signing the right people. And that is a process. And it was also difficult for a lot of businesses out there. As the bloat of 2021.
Yeah, man, we didn't ask for this life. You know, we were forced into this life. We had to start running it.
Oh man, what a great comment. That'll be the title of the episode. We didn't ask for this, but you know, we stepped up to the plate when no one else would.
Where no one else could.
Thank you for bearing with us, guys.
Take us into 3.0, man.
Yeah, so 3.0, I would say, in short, it's taking a more comprehensive approach to paid media that includes financial literacy and the creative. And we believe the best agencies aren't a part in the business, but they are a part of your whole business.
Make that the title.
Even though we're intensely focused on meta and creative, and maybe you can throw TikTok in there. But we do get a full understanding and awareness of your business. And so we're actually, I mean, without going down a rabbit hole of the forecasting, we're in the know on all of these different parts of the business, even though we're not actually executing on things like Amazon and Google. And that is very different from maybe full service agencies. This story is not about how we've evolved our agency service offering, even though like we've expanded some of that. We're not adding all these different channels. We've expanded our thought process of how we actually partner with businesses, and we want to be involved in your whole business. And so getting an understanding and awareness of your business is certainly key to how we've evolved and how we're servicing clients today.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's just equipping us, right, to be better partners to clients at the end of the day, to be intimately aware of everything that goes into their business. And I mean, just to touch on this too, C-Dub, like in the same way of 1.0 leading to 2.0, really at the crux of that is, we're not in control of our fate. And you really harped on that. We're being judged on performance that other people are in control of. And then 2.0 to 3.0 is what we really found as well in that transition. The problem in 2.0 was a lot of the time clients were giving us their targets, and we were like, what leads to these targets?
Yeah.
What this is just kind of like, we didn't have an understanding of what led to those targets and why those targets were what they were and how that leveled up to an overarching AMER target, an overall profitability target. And so again, it's kind of like we're kind of being soldiers here instead of leading, in which we wanted to lead here and really just understand, right, what's leading to this target and what should that target ultimately be.
Yeah. And it's not even about we set the targets, because it's actually just level setting expectations for both parties, right? Like, we're coming alongside you, you're coming alongside us. And it's really refreshing when brands and founders come in with very clear understanding of their unit economics, very clear understanding of their business and financial metrics, and they can come in and setting targets, and it's a quick onboarding. But like I've probably said on this podcast, it's more often than not, that's not the case. And so hence, these founders and operators are looking for help in this way, that we can come alongside them. It's not about who's right, who's wrong, or who's telling who what. It's just, hey, here's the historical inputs and current trajectory of your business. How does this align with your goals? How far away or close are we to you? And how can we help you get there? Every iteration has, as we've evolved, has been focused on pretty much one goal. How do we create a system of growth for e-commerce brands, whether it's rapid or sustainable, based on how you guys and how people, I say you guys, like listeners, are, the brands themselves are, how aggressive they are in growth, or they want to create a cash cow for their future family. That's obviously up to them. But maybe summarize, I guess, what Kynship 3.0 is.
Yeah, Kynship 3.0. At the core foundation, I mean, it has to start with forecasting, right? When we initially onboard a client, 3.0 version of Kynship, step one, everything comes from and bleeds out of this forecast, where we get aligned on, hey, exactly what C-Dub just touched on. What do you want out of your business? Are you trying to aggressively grow over the next couple of years, where you ultimately sell in year 3 for 100 million, or whatever it is? Or you, like he said, that you're looking to have a cash cow where you just operate at 20+% profitability each year and you don't need to grow really aggressively? Whatever that is, that's our starting place. What do you want out of your business? What's the profitability target for the upcoming 12 months? Let's go build a forecast from the ground up. And I need to harp on that real quick. From the ground up does not mean you give me your goal.
Let the man preach.
Give me your goal of 20 million and I go put in input, desired out, like inputs that level up to this output. To be honest, it's very intentional. We don't ask clients what is their desired outputted revenue when we build the initial forecast, because that honestly, it takes away from the purity of the process. We don't want to know that. Again, we want to build this from the ground up, get all your inputs, and then ultimately have it build up to an outputted revenue. So from that place, we want to have an understanding of your profitability target. And from there, from building this thing from the ground up, we can have an AMER target that ties to your profitability target. That AMER target can ultimately tie to our in-ad account target. So now we are aligned with our clients with what our in-ad account target should be. That ultimately levels up to an AMER target, that ultimately levels up to a profitability target, right? So now that's 3.0, right? We have this forecast, we're intimately involved and have a really intimate understanding of the business and everything that goes into it, and all the levers we can pull to ultimately level up to your overall revenue target and your overall profitability target, how that ties to our in-out account targets. And then we have this, host of creator services that includes influencer seeding that can ultimately get the organic, awareness out and create a content flywheel to plug into the paid media ad account side of things, where, as we all know, the number one variable and the number one lever we can pull on to impact performance is content. And who better to tap on than creators that are doing this on a day-to-day basis on the platforms that are human-to-human platforms. So it's not something that we've left behind. It's just a part of the overall system at this point within 3.0 in comparison to 1.0, and how far we've come is great.
Yeah, and more on that to come as far as our creative arsenal, influencer being one of those, but UGC, customer generated content, we've now added branded assets to the mix because those are important and they always have been important. We've never offered that, but that's something that we've added to the mix. So in short, financial modeling and forecasting, paid media, and creative is forming this new involvement. And since we've made this transition about a year ago, our clients are happier. We're in it together as longer term partners, and we're able to get better results. So it's a win-win-win for everybody. Thank you for coming along this story and journey of our agency, but also as the show. And for people listening, I'm sure you've seen, yes, we've hinted at and talked about, maybe asked a question or two on influencer, but it's been much more overarching on the business. And so even though the show won't be called Influence Marketing Blueprint anymore, we'll still chat about influencer. Like Taylor was saying, it's still part of our offering. It's still part of how we think brands are growing today. How it affects the ad accounts and your overall business from just organic pie is still very important. And moving forward, we'll be releasing some episodes, some of the best and brightest in our industry, operators of brands like you. So continue listening, subscribe, hit that follow button. We're going to be talking data and finance driven topics, creative heavy, meta and e-commerce. And let us know what topics you want us to break down, whether that just be Taylor and I, or even what guests you think would be a great fit. We want to hear from you. So looking forward to this new podcast release and the guests that we'll bring on. We'll just have these upcoming episodes I'm really excited about. We're really excited about you guys tuning in and learning. And as always, please let us know how we can be helpful to you, the listener. And thanks for tuning in.